for.
Oh yeah,
Tony, you know, my boxing coach, you know, even from the amateurs. I remember you from the amateurs, and it's just weird how you became my boxing coach.
Yeah.
Kendrick, we fought on 2 cards.
Yeah.
Was it 2?
Fought on cards together. I worked the corner a couple of times.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And Guy, like I said, he refereed my very first kickboxing match that I've ever had. And also, you were there as a celebrity guest, you and
This is a
who was the other guy?
demonstration
Ken Shamrock. And when I fought in
Tyler,
Tyler,
fight.
Texas,
Yeah.
and y'all rode up in those little motorcycles. I remember that.
Yeah, that wasn't the greatest idea. They blew so much gas and smoke. Yeah, right. I'm like going, this is gonna be good for them.
Yeah.
This is gonna be good for the fighters to inhale as they walk to the ring.
Well, Guy, I mean, you have probably one of the longest resumes I've seen, you know, at this table, and you know, a person I've met. You've been fighting for the longest time, like the first UFC that
One
was
of 'em.
out there,
Yeah.
and where there was no weight class at one point. Were you at that? Did you fight in the UFC where there wasn't no weight class?
Yeah, well, there wasn't any rules either.
Yeah.
I mean, the original UFC 1, they had no eye gouging and no kicking to the groin, and they're basically calling out all the the martial art guys that their stuff is so deadly, right? That kind of garbage, and their answer to that
demonstration
was,
of
well,
Wirecast.
you're not allowed to kick to the groin or poke to the eyes. I'm like going, if your entire system consists of kicking people in the groin and poking people in the eyes, you're gonna get your ass kicked anyway. So, UFC 2, they took all the rules out.
Yeah.
And they didn't put rules back in until after UFC. It's either 5. I think it was 5. They had this jackass who ripped the guy. A guy had a cut on his forehead, and he put his finger in the cut
This is a
and tore it
demonstration
open
of
like that.
Wirecast.
And after that, they were like, "All right, we got to do something about that," because they didn't really have to worry about so much the no rules aspect of it, because most of the guys who were successful came from sporting backgrounds. They were like boxers or wrestlers or kickboxers and stuff. So they kind of had a sense of of sportsmanship, and so really the guys didn't really get carried away. It was those clowns who came in and who really couldn't fight who
This is a
did that.
demonstration
So,
of
but
Wirecast.
it was important. There was added rules anyways. The evolutionary part of the sport, because I'll be honest. I mean, I didn't sleep good when I agreed to do it. Everyone's like going. I remember all the interviews, and everyone's like going, "I can't wait to get in there and prove myself." I'm like, I already had like 60 professional fights. I didn't feel like I had to prove to anybody. I'm like going, am I the only one that hadn't slept good since I agreed to do this? 'Cause I don't think I put 3 hours of sleep together. So
Yeah.
it was an interesting format,
This is
an
a
interesting time.
demonstration of Wirecast.
For the
For
UFC.
me,
I mean,
well, it wasn't even mixed martial arts back then. It was no holds barred, but yeah.
UFC, 25 years into it. I'm sure you've seen a huge difference, the UFC from now and then. What do you like about UFC now then? Or what do you not like? What do you wish that you see that was in the beginning stages of the UFC to now?
Well, I think I probably have the similar arguments that a lot of the guys from the older era in boxing and stuff too. Is that
Wirecast.
okay? So the best part that we have now with the way that the sport is actually became a sport, because you got to remember, man, with the no rules stuff, that really wasn't a sport. That was a spectacle.
Yeah.
It was a spectacle. And then when they started adding the rules in, it actually gave a platform for us to train under. There wasn't, boxing, even boxing had a problem back in the old days, because really boxing consisted of not really keeping times. It was if the guy got knocked down and he stood back up. That's when they used to end the rounds in the old days.
Yeah.
So you might have 5 minutes of staring at each other. So so that was also a difficult platform. So when they came with the Queen's Marbury rules, where they had time limits and stuff like that, it gave the boxers a platform in which to train, right? And that's the same thing that when they had the rules and the time limits, it gave us a platform to train, because when you didn't have a platform, no rules, no time limit. I mean, how do you train for that, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How do you train for that? And we kind of had a jump on it, the Lions Den guys, because we were fighting in Pancrase and we had 30-minute time limits, and so we were accustomed to fighting potentially up to 30 minutes, and so we had a little bit of a advantage over some of the other guys. But having that platform, it created a sport. It created a platform in which we can train athletes,
Right.
And of course, it became a little bit more tasteful for people to watch. We love our violence in America, but we like to disguise them and call them games and act civilized and act rules. But really, the rules just allow us to be more violent. You know what I mean? And that's some of the issue.
Of Wirecast.
But I think the negative part that I see is that, and I see it in boxing too. Guys aren't going for the knockouts. They're going to win the rounds, and the problem with that is that the spirit of the game is the finish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so a lot of these guys, you can see it when they're starting to get tired. They're starting to do stuff. You can see that they're pulling back. They're not going for those finishes, and they're winning. They're winning the rounds. Which okay, hey, I'm not going to argue.
This is a
Listen.
demonstration of Wirecast.
I've been accused of doing that once or twice in my day, but and you have to make a decision as a fighter how you're going to do it. But the one part about having the no time limit, you had to finish guys. There was no ands, ifs, or buts about it. You had to finish the guy.
Boxing back in the days, there was no rounds when it first started.
Back,
way back, and then it went from no rounds to like 20 to 15 rounds, and then
12.
now it's 12
they
rounds.
had 99 rounds at some point. I mean, because again, they didn't keep time. It was like if the guy got knocked down, and he stood back up, that was the end of the round. And they let him catch his breath, and then they'd go get knocked. They'd go get knocked down again. So it was it was.
When was the last UFC fight you have attended?
The last UFC fight I attended, let's see, it was UFC 224.
Okay.
Yeah. And but to be honest, I'm real busy with things now. Believe it or not, I'm a doctor now, so it's like I got about 50 million other things to do. And so if I'm not emotionally attached to the fights, I just don't have time for it. Is like obviously Audrey, and she's my goddaughter, and horribly attached to her.
Yeah.
And so she decided to fight as much as I tried to talk her out of it. And
she made her Invicta debut.
yeah,
last
she
week.
did really well. Yeah, she was doing well. She made a couple mistakes and got a draw instead of the victory. She was a clear-cut victory, and then kind of made a mistake. But but like I said, I go to the fights. Now more just I prefer to go to the fights to support people that I care about than just watching the fights now, because you can watch them all over the place now.
Yeah.
It's not like you have
TV,
to go.
stream,
there's
all that
events
stuff.
all the time.
Yeah. Well, we have Tony Mack. Tony, thanks for coming on. I mean, you've been in the game for a long time, from your amateur career to your pro career, but your pro career had to come to a halt.
Had to come to an end due to detached retina. So
Yeah, and you had surgery. You had like 3 surgeries, 3 eyes.
Five
Five.
surgeries. Yeah.
Yeah.
All in like less than a year.
So let's talk about that. You were doing well. You're 13-1.
13-1-1.
Yeah, 13-1-1, and you had to have your eye surgery. How did that make you feel?
At first I was a little depressed because they had a world title set up for me against Mack in Russia. I was about to fight him, and then we was talking about doing that in like a couple of like a year or so from now.
Yeah.
From then, and then I just woke up one day out of nowhere, not a punch or anything, with a white curtain in my eye, and I'm like, what's going on? I let it go for a couple of days, and then went to the doctor, like, you got multiple breaks in your retina, so we got to have eye surgery. And then my retina just keep breaking and just keep having to go. And so I have to just call it quits, I want that, they said if you keep fighting, it cause a chance for you to detach your right eye.
So you didn't want to do like a Sugar Ray Leonard where that happened?
Yeah, if I was fighting for millions of dollars at the time, I'm like, you know what, I would have had to do it at the time. But, I was on the way up, so it wasn't.
You weren't making that money. It wasn't worth
exactly.
it.
It wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And I had a good enough record to somewhat retire on top to where it didn't affect my name. So people didn't even know I retired. I didn't even make an announcement I retired. So everybody just thought I wasn't fighting. I just went right into coaching. So I had a decent enough record to just say I just live off that for right now, and then just had to sit back and think what I was going to do next.
So the next thing was coaching.
Coaching, like,
did you think about that right away?
It wasn't coaching. My next move was just to open up a gym and just do something for boxing fitness, just to help people stay in shape, just to make some money and stuff like that, just to bring in income, because I didn't know what my next move was. And so the next move was just personal train. And then when that was going, and then as you know, amateur fighters started coming along, and then like guys like Rashad Coulter, he was working with us at the gym. He was boxing and he was doing MMA at the same time, so that gave me the opportunity to work with him boxing, and by him boxing, knocking people out, and then he opened the doors for all the other MMA guys he trained with to come train with me. Now we got like 5 UFC fighters I'm training personally, and then I built up an amateur team with like 16 amateur fighters that I'm training. We all fight next week, and so it just naturally came. I guess people respect who did it at a high level, and so they want to follow that. So
last night you had some fighters that you helped train that fought at UFC 228.
Yeah.
There was Charles Byrd and Jeff Neal that they fought last night. Jeff Neal had a crazy knockout. Crazy knockout, and unfortunately Charles Byrd lost his fight. But how different is it from you going from boxing to training MMA fighters? Because boxing is different. When you're in the ring, you cannot teach straight boxing to MMA fighters because the stance and everything else is different. So you can't keep your hands up the whole time while you're fighting in an MMA fight. So how did you have to adjust from boxing to that?
It's a learning process. I gotta, because I don't know what position to put them in exactly, because I don't want them taking a knee or a kick, because they can't do every single thing that boxers do.
Right.
So I gotta just focus on getting their hand speed right, make sure their hands stay up, make sure they don't be lazy with their jab, just perfect their straight punches in order to, I don't want to have them throwing uppercuts or like crazy hooks, stuff like that, because it put them in a position.
Right.
So I gotta sit back and listen to what they gotta tell me about their game in order to adjust the things I gotta do. It's a little weird because I don't want to put them in a bad situation to get hurt. So I'm still learning. So they just let me give them the knowledge that I know from boxing, just the simple stuff like straight punches, your double jab, your straight right.
Jab, I'll tell you what, I've seen some of the fighters that you've trained, and one thing that I have noticed that people don't use a lot is the jab.
Most important punch.
Yeah, the most important punch.
That's all I teach.
Yeah, I mean, the jab is every system of combat that has striking in it has a jab of some sort. There's primitive versions of it, and then there's more modern versions, but there's always a jab, and it's always the most used weapon. And the only guys who are successful, whether they're boxing athletes or kickboxing athletes or MMA athletes, who are successful without a jab, tend to be guys that are just genetically gifted.
Yeah.
I mean, Roy Jones is a prime example of a guy who didn't have a great jab.
But his head movement was crazy.
But he was
slick.
Yeah, he was incredibly gifted, you know what I mean? But as he got older, and God has a sense of humor, because he takes your superhuman powers away at about 36. That's when he took mine away. That's when he took Roy's away. And since Roy didn't have a really good jab, he couldn't stop the bigger fighters, the taller fighters, right? You know? And that was his downfall, because to be honest, he took too many shots at 36, and then you don't recover from those.
Yeah.
He's a prime example of, I tell people here's a genetically gifted guy who, when the joke got pulled out from, didn't have that naturally good box jab that is super essential. You know what I mean?
And a jab, you can win a fight just off a jab. Like Larry Holmes becoming a world champion because he had the best jab in the game. George Foreman never had a jab. I mean, you watch, see what he used to fight. He looked like a trained bear. Yeah, he hit seriously. In his old days, you see him in the 70s. He was a horrible boxer. I mean, he was a hell of a fighter. Obviously, could hit you like a train, but he was a shitty boxer. And really his coming back when he was in his 40s, it's like he had a jab, and of course, when you have an arm the size of a telephone pole, and he's hitting you with a jab like that, it's not like it's not like if I hit you with a jab, I might not even mess your hair up with the jab. Him, on the other hand, will give you brain damage with that jab. So the jab is what I teach the most.
I've seen like some of the guys you've trained, like Ocho Peterson, like Steven. Yeah. Man, he utilizes that. Like that last fight he had, or last two fights that I've seen him fight, that's all he used was the jab.
Yeah, Ocho, he scared me because he's too tough for his own good.
Yeah.
So the only thing I could do is just help him perfect his jab.
Yeah.
Like if you use your jab, it'll get you out of most trouble. You know, it'll keep you safe.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's stubborn with certain parts of his fight game, but as long as he picked up that jab, he'll have success.
Well, you're doing good because he is using that jab.
Yes, sir.
Ken, if you can give that mic to Ken. Ken, man, I've known you forever, many years, and like I said, we fought in a couple of cards together, and you even cornered me at a couple of my fights. And you know, your dad, your family is boxing. They all come from boxing background, and I heard, you know, some crazy stories about your uncles. Like one of your uncles is really, I forgot his name.
Anthony?
No. George.
Brother George.
Brother George. Man, I heard he was good back in his days. I love Brother George, man. He's really good.
Going with this power that y'all was talking about with George Foreman. Uncle George had that power at 168 pounds. It got to be.
Is that the kid?
Yeah.
I guess I should rename my kid George.
But he would come in the gym and, man, he's shaking the walls.
Yeah.
You know, at 168 pounds. So
I remember he came to the gym one time. He started talking to me, and he was trying to teach me how to throw that hook, and he was hitting the bag, and I swear he still had it for his age, and the way he was just demonstrating, you could just tell, like, man, this guy was something else back then.
Uncle George was the one that started everything, from karate to a little bit all the arts. He made sure he did it all, but just his lifestyle wasn't made to commit to actually performing.
Right.
But he did in the Marines in the Job Corps.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
Yeah, and your dad, like, let's talk about how you got started. I mean, you've been fighting forever, and then you decided to call it quits, you know?
Man.
And it's hard for fighters to call it quits once we get older, because in our mind, mentally, we still have it. Like, we're strong and dumb enough to be like, we can still fight at our age. But we really can't. Yeah. It's just that we love it and we have the passion for it. So when did you decide I'm done and I'm going to just start coaching?
When fights kept falling through.
Yeah.
So that was my our God. He telling me something. Because even when I was, you know, be out in training camp, 2 or 3 fights would fall through. So it's like, okay, well, you ain't making no money. Then my wife lost her job. It's like, you better figure out something. Yeah. So even on this last attempt to try to fight again, fight fell through. So it's like, you know what?
I remember that. That wasn't too long ago.
A few months ago. Yeah. But also on that though, I got tired of waking up at 6 to go run. I don't have to do this no more.
Like, what are you doing?
It's funny you say that. When I retired, I told my wife, listen, I'll retire, I'm done. I'm not going to be one of these guys come back. Mm-hmm. And then they had this event called the Bow Dog event, right, that was going on. And this guy was just throwing stupid money. I mean, stupid money. And he goes, hey, they wanted me to fight one of the Gracies. And, you know, I'm like, I'll come out of retirement. They ain't like you have to come out of retirement to knock them out, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, all right. And he offered me enough money that I'm willing to have the argument with my wife if it comes down to argument, because it was a stupid amount of money. And so I started going down to the gym and down to Curtis's place. You know, I figured if the wrestling wasn't a problem, you know, what I mean, because but I went down to Curtis's and I wasn't even really getting hit. I was just getting banged. I mean, I wasn't taking shots. I was blocking most of it and stuff and everything. I just couldn't, like, before I could get out of the way of stuff, you know. And then now I can block it, but you still have to eat it, right? You know what I mean? You still have to.
Wirecast.
And really, like 3 weeks into it, man, I was so beat up, and I hadn't even taken a hard shot to the head yet. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, the hell with this. I'm staying retired, man. I just don't want to do this anymore. I said, I don't mind hitting people. I just want to be hit no more. So that was kind of like the only time I thought about coming out of retirement. I was like, nah, I'll stay retired.
That's what it was.
Just a time in my life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
I don't have to do it no more, so I just spread give it back to the kids now.
Your knowledge now.
That's the best way.
Mm-hmm. Now, you got a tournament coming up.
November 3rd and 4th.
And this is in Fort Worth.
In Fort Worth. So my thing is, since I started boxing, my goal was to always get boxing back like it was in the 80s in Fort Worth. So
Now, when you say in the 80s, are you talking about like fighting like every week? Because back then you were fighting all the time.
But also, but there was just a different mentality, man.
Period.
Yeah.
I mean, if you amateur boxing in Dallas sucks. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm probably not making any friends by saying that with the Dallas things, but I mean, it's different. It's like we got the gloves. We're gonna get in a gym register in the Fort Worth
3 times in one day.
We used to fight out of.
The old days, yeah. Back in the 80s, you got to understand something, man. They used to have the whole convention center. I mean, not convention center, but Will Rogers. Full.
Hack it out
and
every night.
And you see what happened was you sat right next to the guy. You walked up, once you weighed in that night, and they gave you like a little bit of time. That you had a time you showed up, and you sat in this chair with the person you're fighting. And then when that fight went, you walked up to the next chair, you sat down, and the next chair. Yeah, no, seriously. And there's like 50 chairs.
Yeah.
And they do it, and they would have, and I'm not exaggerating, they're not exaggerating, these guys can vouch for it. There was like 400, 500 athletes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky to get 100 to 200 now, and Fort Worth gets about 200. Yeah. Dallas, man, they're lucky to get, they're lucky to get 100.
The kids are spoiled these days to fight like that.
There's so many options.
That's
the thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
So I'm glad Ken's attacking the area that hadn't been attacked, which is, I talked to you about way back, but the east part of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
There's so much talent out there, so many athletes that no one was going to. There wasn't no place for them to go. Yeah. So that's why I'm glad you're there.
Appreciate it. I'm determined to stay on the east side.
You make a point. There's too many options. To be honest, I mean, like I was a wrestler before I was a boxer, right? But boxing and wrestling are poor man's sports, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they don't take a huge amount of money to get involved in, and the tournaments aren't expensive, and all this other stuff. And so really, I grew up with I always hate using the term poor because poor is a relative term in America compared to like other countries. But I would say we grew up financially strained, right? And so on the grace of other people, I got the opportunity to do other sports and things like that. But I gravitated towards the boxing and the wrestling and stuff like that. That was just kind of my personality. But the problem with it now is that these kids are not, I feel like they're the examples of the athletes now. They got too many things. They think they can be hip hop stars or gangsters or stuff like this. Where before, and of course, I'm probably the oldest guy here now, right? But in the 70s, I mean, every rec center had boxing. In fact, I tell the funny story. The people go, "How'd you get into wrestling?" Well, in 1976. The Rocky movie came out, and none of you guys were alive back then, but I was, and I was 8 years old. And you got to understand something about this movie. I mean, people literally cheered. I mean, they were literally cheering as if the cheering is going to change the result of the movie or something. You know what I mean? I'm not kidding. I mean, people are sitting there going, we were cheering, and I was one of them, like, Rocky, like this, and then like I was so excited. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be a boxer, and of course, like I said. I ate the raw eggs, dude. I ate the raw eggs, and so I would go down to the boxing center, and like I said, every rec center had boxing back then, every rec center, and so I joined the team. About 3 weeks in, the coach said, "Hey, you want to spar?" I'm like, "Of course I want to spar. I'm Rocky Balboa," and I got hit right in the nose, and it literally bled for 3 days straight, and after it stopped bleeding. I joined the wrestling team.
Now I'm a wrestler.
I actually didn't get back into boxing until I was like 17.
But going back with those options though, and the boys, I think I was one of the last years to fight out of the Panther Boys Club.
Demonstration.
And that was in the early 90s. I was the last year to fight at Will Rogers, and that was in 92. Yeah. So man, I actually came in at the perfect time because I was able to see the fighters of the 80s. That's why I said I want to get it back to the 80s, meaning more of bring that notoriety back to the sport, keeping them busy, if it's not every weekend, at least once a month, twice a month.
Back then, like the guys that I see now that are coaches, like Harry Washington, those guys who had 300 or 400 fights back then. I mean, it's just crazy. 500-600 fights, and they talk about the stories where there were how many times they fought in a week and in a day, and I'm like, that's crazy. Now, do you think USA Boxing will allow something like that now.
No.
But they shouldn't. I mean, but they should.
Times are different.
Yeah, I'll be honest. One of the things, I'm actually a functional neurologist, among the things, okay? And, and so you pay a price. The nice part, though, will be about amateur boxing. Amateur boxing is not so much of a knockout sport as it is a technical sport, or they try to make it like that. So they stop fights pretty quick, and sometimes even quicker than we want. Yeah. But I think it's important that we have to change with the times on this, because what will kill the sport, and what has killed the sport, listen, I want to let my son play football, and I play football and stuff, but I don't want my son playing football because I've treated 16-year-old kids that have 3 and 4 major concussions. And you don't see it so much in the boxing. Believe it or not, I know you would think you'd see more, but you don't. And it usually has something to do with most of the guys that have successful boxing programs are also responsible with their athletes. The ones that are always throwing guys in the ring, keep coming here like this, keep like this. They don't last because they don't keep their people, right? Because people are like going, I got better things to do than me being so-and-so's punching bag, And so, but yeah, I don't think you're going to see you won't see the 3 fights a night stuff that they used to have, but No,
you don't want them being punch drunk before they're 18. Well, what do you think about now that USA Boxing is now allowing where you don't have to wear headgear?
So it's good and bad. Well, the main bad thing is leading to a lot of cuts. So they're actually starting to get back to the headgears.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. The headgear that they use for competition doesn't stop anything. The only thing that stop is cuts.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not going to stop concussive blows. If they were going to try to do that, they'd adopt that top 10 headgear. That's the only one that actually has been proven to actually cut down on concussive.
Put that in my
and that's mostly
top 10.
Yeah, top 10. It looks like seriously, the rubber one, Yeah, believe it or not, that that is only really, to be honest, for the straight on shots. They know when the hook shots, when you get hit and your head spun like that, it doesn't have quite the same protection. But the straight on shots, that's by far your best headgear. Yeah, and it's hard to get hold of, and they're expensive. No, they're expensive. I mean, they're like what, $150, something like that. They were $150 20 years ago. I don't even know what they are now. So.
But the kids, they into the brands. They're 150. They see that winning brand or the fighting brand. No, give me that one.
Tony, first sparring match when you first started boxing, and you got your first sparring match. How was that?
I'm trying to think about when it was. It was good. I came straight from football. I was 20 years old when I started boxing. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was old, and
this is a demonstration
first sparring match
of Wirecast.
Was very exhausting. I almost died.
Everybody's in.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think my first sparring match was against Marcus Hicks.
That's not who you want to spar.
And my nose.
I was gonna say,
my nose, like
your
first
fight.
Yeah, your first fight. Yeah, because he don't know how to hold back.
Marcus
Coach Larson.
Coach Larson.
Well, I take it back. It was my second sparring because Coach Larson brought a guy in. It was a kid. I kind of like did good when it was a big guy, and then Coach Larson brought. I got somebody for you. He brought him in the next week, and Marcus Hicks came in and busted my nose. My nose was stopped bleeding.
That little guy.
Yeah. Yo, man, he cracked me so hard, and I thought, like, man, should I be doing this? Let me call my dad real quick.
Tony was one of my first ones.
Oh, man.
Actually, it's funny you said that when you said you got hit. You should do it. I tell people, everybody wants to be a fighter right till they get punched in the face.
Mike Tyson,
and right there and then, you have the decision. That's the deciding factor. And how you handle that being punched in the face is whether you're really going to be a fighter or it's time for you to look at
also, like, I brought 3 of my friends with me. They drove with me. And after I got out the ring.
Because you did good in your first one. I
got out the ring. I was like, how did they get here? I forgot I drove them. I was like, man, then like a week later, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I like it.
What about you, Kendrick? Your first sparring match?
I don't remember my first one.
Sorry, my bad.
I don't remember the first one because I started sparring and fighting at 6 or 7 years old. So I really don't know the first one. But I got to go off this Marcus, though. Your first. So
I sparred Marcus. He dropped me a couple times.
I didn't have sparring for one of my pro fights. And I'm fighting heavyweight. So lawman said, "Hey man, Marcus, you know
why
what?
everybody got a lawman story?"
Say, man, we went in there and we went 3 hard rounds. I'm like, this dude, little bitty something, man. It's a wrecking ball for real.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Wrecking
from
ball's
that
a good
day,
name for him.
man, I had nothing but respect for that dude, man.
He's one of the reasons why a lot of successful Dallas
Fighters are where they are.
He make you or break you.
Indeed. No, but yeah, I don't remember my first sparring, man, because it was so long ago. But I did have that is this really what I want to do moment, was really fighting Alan Carlton. My first open fight, and this guy defending 4 or 5 regional state Golden Glove champion. He was 34. I was just turning 18. And that joker hit me with a left hand, and I'm like, oh, shoot. Well, you in here now, boy. What you gonna do? You got to eat. Hey, either you going to suck it up or Dad, stop this fight.
Yeah. You know, my first sparring match when I used to kickbox, you probably know him, Steve Gowen.
Oh, yeah. Steve.
Yeah, Steve Gowen was my kickboxing.
He don't know nothing about sparring either.
No.
It's always a fight with him.
No, with him, what happened was I was like the only girl there. And he was like, Lisa, you're going to fight. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, so he brought in this kid, said that no female could ever beat him. Like, no, I'm not going to get beat up. So how I always wind up sparring, he'll bring somebody from high school or from the streets and say, Lisa, you're going to spar this guy. After I did like an hour and a half, 2 hours of training, then I'll go spar him. Then he had 2 other kids. And I remember I used to cry in the bathroom because it wasn't a sparring match. It was like you were actually fighting. And Steve Gowen was like, no, you're not done. You're not done. He doesn't care if you fell. He don't care if you were crying. You're going to keep going. And he did not know when to stop. Yeah. And I think that's where I got a lot of my toughness was from him, because I was like, yeah, I could fight anybody. Like, yeah. He would just throw you to the wolves. Like, oh, you're fighting. My second kickboxing match was a title fight. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And, you know, in kickboxing, yeah, I'm like, I'm just now learning. He goes, oh, Lisa, by the way, we're in Odessa, Texas. And this girl, she was like a black belt in karate or something. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, all I heard was, "Pah!" Like she was just hitting so hard. He goes, oh, Lisa, that's who you're fighting. Because back then in kickboxing, there was like a 10-pound difference. There wasn't no like, you got to be on weight or 3 pounds. It was like a 10-pound difference. And she was bigger than me. And he goes, oh, and this is a 6-round title fight. And I'm like, and I was like, oh. Okay. He goes, you got this, Lisa. Man, you're tough. That's all he said. You're tough. You got this. Boy, I didn't know what I got myself into.
Let me ask this real quick. With your toughness, we all come from that. This who you spawn with. Guys, I'm finding now the fighters these days, what I stop doing is saying we're going to spar Wednesday. Now when they get there, hey, you sparring today.
Yeah, because they'll I forgot my mouthpiece. Yeah. I don't have that. I got to stay after work. Yeah.
I might do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, that's how Steve Gowen used to be. He wouldn't tell you when you were sparring. He would just say, "Oh, you're sparring today," and it will always be after your training. It was never at the beginning or in the middle. It was like after you trained hard. And Steve Gowen was like a throwback. Yeah. And his training was freaking hard, and so you could do it at 2 hours of training, and then you go spar.
I think that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, that's what I had. Run to the gym 6 miles, do your workout. Hey, we got some people coming to spar. I'm like, dog, man, I just finished the workout. No, you thought you finished. Oh, they need 8 rounds. You got 8 rounds in? I guess so.
No.
That's how it was. Yeah, I always did a little bit. I was always. I've changed up a lot. Like, I didn't like to run. I ran a lot. I was in college wrestling, and to be honest, man, I was 6'1", weighed 185 pounds, and skinny. Because I'm 6'1" now, and I'm 200 pounds, and I'm thin now. So imagine 185, and then cutting. I had to cut to 157, and I had to run a lot, and I hated it. So I preferred just to spar. If I was gonna train, I was just gonna spar. If it was MMA, I'd wrestle. One day would be wrestling, grappling type deal. The next day would be a boxing, kickboxing type deal. And I preferred to do that. And even though that being punched in the nose had a profound effect on me. Not only did I join the wrestling team, but my style of fighting was not to get hit.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a long career. Because I had the long career, it's because I didn't get hit much.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later in my life when, like I said, when God started that sense of humor started slowing me down. And that's one of the reasons I retired. I was like, I can see this stuff coming, man. I just can't get out of the way no more.
This
And,
is a demonstration
it was just
of
time to do something
Wirecast.
else, And so, but the thing is if I had to do it over again, with what I know, I would do a lot less sparring. We do a lot less sparring now, and we make it more situational, because what's happening is again, the problem with MMA when it first started, nobody knew what the hell they were doing. You know what I mean? And so it was this all-out thing, And what happened is these guys were wasting themselves in the gym. Yeah. And, and I was like, waste yourself in the gym. There's no money made in the gym.
This
Money's
is
made
a
out in front of the
demonstration
lights.
of Wirecast.
Yeah, so I changed up a lot of how I did some, like from my own training. My guys don't train like I do because I'm smarter about it now. I think a lot of the guys now is the amount of knowledge that a lot of the old school guys are getting, but the old school guys are getting good information now, so they're actually, creating the old school mentality, but they're being smarter about how they're developing their athletes versus, they're actually developing them versus, let's see how tough you are.
Yeah.
Let's see how tough you are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest change I've seen in
is
just
a
about every,
demonstration
in
of
boxing, I've
Wirecast.
seen a huge amount. Because you're also watching boxers leaving the sport now with less injuries and less stuff, and you're seeing that a lot of things. And MMA hasn't done that yet. MMA, the athletes are still leaving with some big problems, physical problems, and I'm sure they'll catch up.
Boxing learning how to when to call it quit, like Andre Ward, he realized that he was like, I'm not.
He was on top.
He was on top. He was like, but I need to keep my brains, my smarts, my senses. And he was like, look, call it quit at a
young
good time.
age.
Yep.
Yeah.
Undefeated.
Yeah.
He haven't lost a fight since he was 12.
Yeah.
So undefeated through the amateurs all the way up to now. The first one. The first one. Yeah.
They're starting to see more of the business aspect.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the difference in boxing now is it's more of a business than fighting the best.
Do you think that's what Mayweather put it out there?
And it's a tad disappointing, but you can see where it's at.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, let's face it. The whole Conor McGregor and Mayweather thing was a farce. I mean, anybody thought that fight was real? I'm like, are you kidding me? It was a sparring match. You know what I mean? And then that they walked away with $100 million apiece. And so part of me gets irritated with that because people are like, do you see? I'm like going, that wasn't a real fight. Yeah. I mean, I go, one thing about McGregor knows how to finish a guy. He actually caught Mayweather with that uppercut. I think it was the third round. Yeah. And you saw Mayweather sit in the ropes for a second. Like, who wouldn't pounce on that, right? I mean, who wouldn't pounce on it? Instead, he's kind of backed up like this. I'm like, that's when I looked at it, I went, this is BS.
Quick question. Like, what if boxing do like something UFC do, like make it under one big umbrella and like make it one? You know how famous? Would you think that would help boxing? Because it's like the Wild Wild West now. Each promoter is going after each other and stuff like that. So what if boxing do something like the UFC? I think that's the smartest thing.
Here's the
I
problem
thought
with
about that too.
Here's the issue with that, guys, and you don't want that. The reason that these guys can make the money, the Mayweathers make the money, is because of the Muhammad Ali Act, right? Yeah. Which allows, what it does, it disallows the promoter to own the contracts on the fighters, be the promotion, and also be the broadcasters and everything, right? So it cuts that down, right? And so what that does, it allows these guys to negotiate fights. I mean, and you can't do that with these other, because it specifically says boxing in that thing, in the Muhammad Ali Act. So the problem with that is that the UFC isn't under that influence. So the UFC is, first, they own the contracts on all the athletes. They are the promotion, and they're also the sanctioning body. All right, so they control everything. So the reality is, it's not really a world championship. It's a UFC championship. Now, we recognize it as the world championship, but the reality is nobody outside of that little that organization can fight for the championship. You have to sell your soul to the UFC in order to get that. And so, and again, but it has its pros and cons. Okay, the pro part about it is, it forces guys to fight.
Yeah,
all right, it forces the fight. Whereas in boxing, you have a lot of guys that just dance and dance and dance and dance. And stuff. So they'll dance around the fights, and this does force them. But the other problem, the problem with it is that these guys are limited in their marketing their brand.
Yeah.
And that's important. I mean, because you only have, I tell these guys, you have a very short amount of time. I fought professionally for 17 years, right? But I really had 2 careers. Really I had a boxing and kickboxing career for the first half, and then really I was retiring because I had a lot of accolades but no money.
Yeah.
I'm 25 years old. I'm like, I got to do something in my life, And then the UFC came along, and I was like, I saw that, and I was like, I had a lot of versatility as an athlete. Like, I'm like probably the blueprint of the original UFC. What became the UFC fighter, because I ended up being a world champion kickboxer, but I was undefeated boxer. I was an all-American wrestler. I was a national level judo player. Nobody had those skill sets, right?
Yeah.
And I did. And so I saw the UFC, and I'm like, oh hell, I can win that. There was not a doubt in my mind I couldn't win that, and because everybody was so one-dimensional back then, a wrestler only wrestled, a boxer only boxed, right? And so I was like, all right, so I'm gonna go in this thing, I'm gonna fight. They're gonna close it down. I said, there's no way they're gonna allow no holds barred for forever, and I'll be able. I knew I could win. I figured, I'll go out. I won this crazy tournament. That'll be my heyday, and I'll go get a real job. And then. And I had like 65, I had 60-something fights, stepping into, that's before MMA. And then MMA came along, I had 65 more fights. Because MMA, they had tournaments.
I know.
So in MMA, they had tournaments and stuff. So you'd have 3, So you had.
You got a resume, man.
Yeah. So you had 3 to 4 fights a night.
Yeah.
Sometimes with MMA, or before it was MMA, no holds barred. But you see, and that was the funny part is I was ready to retire, and then it was like. I was supposed to fight in the tournament, but they bumped me out of the tournament, and I fought 1 match. So I said, okay, I'll fight in UFC 5. The first one was UFC 4.
UFC 5, we're at 2.8.
And so with UFC 5, and then my buddy Oleg Tutarov had problems with his visa, so I said, you can have my place. I'll fight in the tournament again, and fight as an alternate again. And then the Pancrase organization offered me more money than I'd ever made in my entire life, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I'll go do it. Mm-hmm. And I spent 5 years over there.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Another 10 years or so, something like that.
What do y'all think about bare knuckles? It's new, and I say new, but it really isn't coming from where you're coming from. But now bare knuckles is out there.
Bare knuckle boxing is just a rehash of what they used to do.
I mean, they're getting a lot of fighters or athletes that are no longer fighting or retirement, or they used to fight in the UFC, and now they're out here. Yeah, for the money. They pay good. They reached out to me, and I'm like, you can't pay me enough to do bare knuckles. No, but what do y'all think about that?
It's something, man. Like I say,
it's a different style of fighting, though. It's precision fighting instead of like, you look at a boxer that can throw 40, 50 punches around, right? You're not throwing 40, 50 punches with a bare fist. It just ain't gonna happen,
Okay.
Yeah, it's more technical.
It's crazy.
It better be.
was approached, actually. They was looking for I'm not gonna say his name, but he former heavyweight champion. And I went, well, how much?
This is a demonstration.
How much? I'm like, well, shoes. I'm retired. I'm doing good with my coaching. How much you say again? So as fighters, like you said earlier, boxing, MMA, poor man's sports. So if your retirement life, after the sport is not doing too good, you're going to jump on that extra money. Yeah. Which is cool. But for me personally, I'm like, it sound good. I've made that money before. I don't need it again. I'm doing good with what I'm doing now. Because, as I'm retired now, my wife was just telling me, man, that hurt. Dang, man, you getting soft, huh? The pain tolerance is not the same as it was.
I know. It's like, that's for sure. One thing I'll safely say is that pain tolerance is a learned thing, right?
It is.
When you step out of that, it's the same thing. Like, when I stepped out, I was 2 years out, and they were starting to hit me, and I was like, I didn't even really get hit. I just got on the shoulder to get hit. I'm like, oh, hell no. I ain't going back.
Charles, we was training up there, and Charles missed hit me in the nose. I was like, man, they've been punched in a long time. That hurt.
I could sit here and talk to you guys for another hour, but we have just a minute left to be like, we were having fun. Hey, we can still talk. But, before we wrap this interview up, I want to greatly appreciate each and one of you guys. Guy It's always an honor and pleasure to have you on. You are a legend in the sport, and continue. You have a gym now,
Sure.
And it's in Plano. Yeah.
No, it's here.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, the gym is just down the street. It's off of it's off Preston and 635.
And you guys just recently opened it.
Yeah, we've been there 7 months now. So yeah, we're at the Addison location for 10 years, 10, 11 years, and then but yeah, we'll always be a competition gym, and so I've kind of scaled back on how many like we still do boxing, amateur boxing, where we like to do that, and then the MMA is we do that, but a lot of the competition now is the jiu-jitsu competition. We literally put 60 to 120, depending on what tournament, into tournaments. So so it's kind of cool to kind of go like I think an evolutionary process, in what we're trying to do.
What's your address so people want to come? Want to train?
Okay, well, the website's guymezger.com. Okay, that's pretty easy, guymezger.com. And then the address is 13344 Preston Road.
Yeah, not that far.
Yeah. No, literally, it's you can literally walk there.
Yeah. Vincent, thank you so much. I mean, you've been in the game for a long time just as well, along with your father. You've had some world champions, and you're all the way from Funky Town, Fort Worth, so I appreciate you for driving out here. So tell everyone where they can find you, your gym, and your hours of operation.
Oh, you can reach me on Instagram, Reyes Boxing Gym, and same thing on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's 1109 Roberts Cutoff Road, and I don't open until 5 o'clock, but I can get there earlier. But on the weekends, I'm there at 7:30 till usually 11 o'clock, and then I don't do nothing on Sunday.
Yeah. Tony, go ahead. Tell where they can find your gym, social media.
T-Mack Elite Training inside the den. My website is allenboxing.com or T-Mack Elite, and I have tmackelite.com, and I also have Instagram. T-Mack Elite Training, Facebook, T-Mack Elite Training, and we're right at 109 North Greenville Avenue, Suite A, Allen, Texas, 75002. And my overall goal is to have boxing for fitness for the norm. We want to learn how to box like a professional amateur, and I want to have an elite boxing, MMA background where all the top fighters come. We compete, we just stay active, and so just have a gym full of champions. That's the overall goal.
Well, you're definitely up and coming. Mm-hmm. You're new into the sport, and we're going to talk here in a second. But you, Kendrick, thank you so much. I've known you for many years. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Go ahead and tell everybody where you're located, and again, tell them about your tournament.
Dream Performance Academy, Fort Worth, PAL, 3625 East Loop 820, Fort Worth. Then the tournament is November 3rd and 4th.
Okay.
Saturday and Sunday.
Well, what tournament is it?
It's our first Fort Worth PAL boxing tournament.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys register. Go enter this tournament.
I think we got some guys will go.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, guys, thank you for everybody who logged in to Facebook Live. I greatly appreciate it. For those that are on eargasmradio.com, you guys can follow Global Fight Talk. Like I always like to say, stalk us, because when you stalk us, you know everything about us. So just don't follow, so stalk us. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm now starting to tweet again. So, you can follow us there. For those who want to do a commercial radio with us, inbox me. Advertise with us. We always have pro athletes, and of course, we always have legendary and upcoming coaches. We're going to have to do this again. Because, the conversation can go on and on. But you guys stay tuned next Sunday from 6 to 7. Peace.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
That's pretty good. You doing good with the masters, too.
Yeah, masters. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Keep forgetting about my masters.
With these guys is that you got to throw out something like